Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be going over my top 5 underplayed cards in Commander from The Dark, which was the 4th expansion released all the way back in 1994. I've made sure all of my picks are no more than $5 on Card Kingdom at the time of recording as to be budget friendly. So starting off the list at number 5 we have Venom. It's an aura enchantment that costs 2 green and 1 mana of any color to cast, and the oracle text reads, whenever enchanted creature blocks or becomes blocked by a non-wall creature, destroy the other creature at the end of combat. So this is a pseudo death touch effect for a creature. It's somewhat unique in green. There's plenty of creatures that already have death touch, but not many ways to give it to your creatures. There's a few ways to give all of your creatures conditional death touch, like Sarith the Viper's Fang, Orin Frostfang, and Bow of Nylea. But as you can see, none of these can help with blocking. And there's also Ruthless Instincts, Lace with Moonglove, and Serpent's Gift, but these only last one turn, and Venom's effect is more powerful than Death Touch in my opinion, since you don't have to deal any damage for its effect to work. If you're already running a deck with access to green and white, you could run Venom with a creature or effect like Palace Guard. I think that's pretty good incentive for your opponents not to target you with a bunch of creatures. An even better use for Venom, though, is using it in combination with card effects like Lure or Taunting Elf, which force your opponents to block a creature you control with all of their creatures that are able, effectively making this wipe an opponent's board of all its creatures. The non-wall restriction with the card doesn't really change much, unless your opponent is running an Arcades deck, and the card's effect is pretty unique in green and definitely usable, so I think it deserves a bit more love than it's currently receiving, with only 91 decks tracked by EDH Rec. Okay, at number 4 there's Skull of Orm. It's a 3-cost artifact with which you can pay 5 mana to tap it and bring an enchantment card back from your graveyard to your hand. The Skull is on the list because there isn't a lot of reusable enchantment recursion cards in general, and most of them are in white, so if you have a deck without white that runs a lot of enchantments, you don't have many options. What we do have is Starfield of Nyx, which is a really powerful card and appreciated as such, but it hasn't been reprinted and is unfortunately $20 right now on Card Kingdom, so it isn't very budget friendly. There's also Silent Sentinel. It does bring enchantments straight back to the battlefield, but it has a very large casting cost and relies on attacking, which makes it a bit too vulnerable for my liking. There's also Hall of Heliod's Generosity, which is obviously a really good land that I highly recommend for the enchantment themed decks, but it does run a little expensive at $8 on Card Kingdom. And as far as I can tell, there's only one other one, and that's Gen Arcanum Weaver, which is an interesting commander, but not really viable as one of the 99 in your deck, as it's quite restrictive. But anyway, back to the Skull. The major drawback is obviously the 5 mana requirement for the activated ability, but it is one of the most reliable, reusable ways of getting your enchantments back, and the only one you can put in any commander deck. Plus, if you're running an enchantment deck, you probably want a few ways to get them back. So, anyone who's running a commander with an enchantment theme like Gen, Arcanum Weaver, Sithis Harvest Sand, Tuvasa the Sunlit, Zur the Enchanter, and so on, should really consider the Skull. Being eligible for every commander deck and only in less than 500 decks tracked by EDH Rec seems too low to me. Next up, at number 3 we have Ashes to Ashes. 2 black and 1 mana of any color for this sorcery, which lets you exile 2 target non-artifact creatures with an additional effect of the spell dealing 5 damage to you. So a couple of things to note about this spell. Firstly, you can't target artifact creatures, but I think that's pretty negligible, as there's usually not many artifact creatures on the board, and if there is, they're almost never the best targets for removal. Secondly, if the 2 creatures you target aren't there when the spell resolves, like someone sacrificing them in response, then you will not take the 5 damage. Obviously, being able to remove 2 creatures for the same cost as a murder is really good, and it's exiling them. I don't think I really need to explain why that's so much better than destroy. There is some exile removal in black, but not a lot, and most of them cost at least 4 CMC for a single target removal. I think even though Ashes to Ashes is a sorcery, it's still strictly better than any of these cards with the exception of Deadly Rollick in most situations. But Deadly Rollick is out of a lot of people's budget. You might be turned off by this card by the 5 damage you take, but any life gain themed deck like Dina, Vito, Willow Dusk, or Baladros Witherbloom, that doesn't really matter. Even if you just have a little bit of life gain, I think you should really consider this card. And if you have a deck where you want to lose life, like Greven, Predator Captain, or Villas, Broker of Blood, then I think it's almost an auto add. This is a great removal spell and definitely needs to be in more than the 1500 or so decks tracked by EDH Rec. Up now at number 2 is Sisters of the Flame, which is a 2/2 creature that taps for a red mana and costs 2 red and 1 mana of any color to cast. A mana dork with converted mana cost 3 isn't very good for most decks and doesn't sound like much, but this is a red one. There's only one other creature that taps for red mana. Well, technically 3, but Chandra's Embercat and Kark Clan Stoker are quite conditional, so they aren't really viable in most decks. The other creature though, Iron Mare, is a very popular card. Right now it's in more than 12,000 of the decks being tracked by EDH Rec. Obviously Iron Mare is a better overall card, as it's only 2 mana of any colour to cast, but it is more susceptible to removal than the Sisters, as it's an artifact creature and it's only a 1/1, so it will get destroyed from Blazing Volley or Seismic Shudder effects. Really, almost every deck that uses Iron Mare, and there are a lot of them, could really consider adding the Sisters. There's only 162 decks tracked that are using this card right now, and with Red's limited ramp, I think it's a decent addition to a lot of decks that most people just don't know exists. Alright, and finally, coming in at first place is Dark Sphere, barely making the list as it tops my price limit of $5 for a near mint copy from Card Kingdom. It is a 0 CMC artifact that you can tap and sacrifice for an effect that reads, the next time a source of your choice would deal damage to you this turn, prevent half that damage, rounded down. So right now Darksphere is getting attention from just a couple specific decks, Heartless Hidetsugu being one of them for obvious reasons, and it's also in some ad nauseam themed decks where it combos with Sickening Dreams to save you from dying with everyone else. But you could put it in just about any ad nauseam themed deck, as you want 0 CMC cards, and if you pulled it early then Darksphere's ability could save you from losing in some scenarios, especially from Voltron commanders where you're getting dealt a lot of damage by one source. For that reason, I think it's also a pretty good fit with any commander that benefits off cheap artifact spells, like Joyra, Sai, Alila, or Kaika. All of these commanders could definitely consider Darksphere for the 99. As well as all of that, its ability to sacrifice itself for free is somewhat unique for a zero-cost artifact. There are only 4 other zero-cost artifacts that can sacrifice themselves for a cheaper price than Darksphere. You can build some interesting combos with this effect. One I did see was using Altar of the Brood to mill out your opponents using Tisha, Ancestor's Apostle, Salvager of Ruin, and any of the free artifacts that sacrifice themselves like Darksphere. I'm sure there's also some combos you could do with Emery, Lurker of the Lock as the commander, and a way to untap her off playing the Darksphere. There's just so many options for this card, and it's only in 710 decks tracked by EDH Rec, whilst being eligible for all of them. I think that it's also worth noting that this is the only card on my list that is exclusive to the Dark, meaning it was not reprinted in a later set. And that's the list finished. Thanks for watching everyone.